All right. Hello. Can everybody hear me? We are live. Thank you for joining. It is Friday, 10 a.m. This is our live stream. We're going to be talking about, of course, all the AI news from the week. We have a really special guest who will be joining us as well. And we are actually live streaming to X, Twitter today. So this is a first. Hopefully it's working. If you're joining us from X, thank you. And thank you to everybody joining us from YouTube. We also have here Melissa from the Forward Future team. Hey, Melissa.
Hello.
And we have Alex as well from the Forward Future team. Hey, Alex.
Hello, everybody.
And Alex will be doing the moderation. So if you get banned, you can blame him. Let's see. On today's episode, we have a bunch of cool stuff. We have a few housekeeping items we'll go over. Then we're going to bring our special guest on. We'll be talking about what I consider the coolest news from the week. Of course, if you want to talk about something else, drop it in the comments. If you have questions, thoughts, insight about any of the things we're talking about, drop it in the comments. We will be reading them. And then we'll do some Q&A. So you'll be able to ask our special guests some questions. You can ask me questions. We can talk about anything you want. Drop those questions. Hey, David Shapiro. So drop the questions in the chat and we'll cover it. So few housekeeping items. Just a reminder, we're going to try to do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific. So hopefully you can join on Fridays. And we're going to be bringing awesome special guests on most of the episodes. Of course, Melissa and Alex are also awesome and will be joining us on every episode. We also launched memberships. So if you want to help support the channel, check it out. We have memberships. We'll be doing some member-only videos, including some members-only Q&A. So if you want to support the channel, do that. But of course, I'll be producing all of the free content that I always do, basically like 5 or 6 days a week. So that'll be coming. And I want to say thank you to our recent members. Let's see. So first, Luigi, thank you so much for becoming a member. Thank you to Murray and to Marco. So thank you all. As soon as I put this live stream schedule up, they joined as members. So thank you so much. And let's see, couple other housekeeping items. Check out my newsletter, MatthewBerman.com, Tuesdays and Fridays, giving you all the up-to-date AI news. And then also we're doing deeper dive insights and kind of thought pieces. And we're putting a lot of effort into it, and we're really proud of the progress it has made. So definitely check it out, MatthewBerman.com. Follow me on Twitter at MatthewBerman. That is where I put all my, one-off, non-polished thoughts. And the last thing is I want to start doing more AI interviews, or I should just say interviews with AI industry luminaries. So who do you want me to talk to? Who is the most interesting? Who would you want to hear from? Let me know in the chat, and I will try to get them. If they are willing to chat with me, I will chat with them. So without any further ado, we are going to bring on our special guest. And our special guest today is Daniel Miessler, and I will bring him on in a second. Let me just give you a brief intro to him because he is so cool. Daniel's the founder of Unsupervised Learning. They build AI apps and infrastructure that upgrades humans. And then the reason I got introduced to him, the reason I found out about him, is because he's also the creator of an open source project called Fabric, which is an incredible project. It's an open source framework for augmenting humans using AI. It's kind of like a tried and true method of prompts and techniques to use to automate your digital life throughout your day. And it's really awesome. So I'm excited to talk to him. Let's bring him on. There he is. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. Welcome to the live stream. I'm going to switch this for a second, and we're going to start sharing the screen. There we are. Okay. Let me change that. There we go. All right. So Hey, Daniel, this is Daniel's open source project, Fabric. Hopefully you've heard of it. I've covered it numerous times on the channel, nearly 22,000 stars. That is awesome. Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about Fabric.
Yeah. So my background is actually information security. So I've been doing that for quite a long time. And end of 2022, I went independent. So I got rid of my last normal job and went independent and started going full time into AI. And basically, the podcast and brand and stuff like that was called Unsupervised Learning. So now that's just the overall company. And we make a bunch of stuff, but this project here is exactly the way you said it and the way you covered it in your videos. It's basically open source, crowdsourced prompts for specific use cases.
And give me like 2 use cases that you use it for your own daily life.
I would say extract wisdom is probably my favorite one.
That's the one you
It's
showed me
where,
live.
yeah, I think I showed that one to you live. And I get value from that one every day, multiple times per day. I've got another one that's kind of similar that I just created recently called Create Story Explanation. So I was watching a video that I had to watch like 5 times in a row because it was so hard to comprehend. So I wrote another one called Create Story Explanation, and it kind of explains it to you in like the story form, even if it's extremely complex material. So I've been using that one a lot, but I use quite a few during the course of a day.
And it's command line based, right?
It is. There's a GUI. We're working on some other integrations. A viewer created Raycast integration, so I actually switched over to Raycast so I could
Oh, I love
use.
Raycast.
Yeah, so Fabric is going to be in Raycast now, so you basically have whatever in your clipboard and you can call Fabric directly from Raycast.
Okay, awesome. So for everybody here, drop your questions. If you have any questions for Daniel, specifically any questions about Fabric, we'll cover them later in the live stream. So let's talk about some of the news from the week. This was a very big week. I know you probably think I say that every week, but this was, I think, an especially interesting week. There was a lot going on. And the first thing I want to talk about is Microsoft's AI recall, or recall AI search feature. So for those of you who are not aware, this was a feature that was supposed to launch with the Copilot Plus AI PCs when those came out, I don't know, a couple months ago. And Microsoft got a bunch of crap for privacy and security issues. I think they were storing everything locally, but unencrypted, which, you know, that seems like a no-brainer. Go ahead and encrypt that. But I think this was a brilliant feature, and essentially what it allows you to do is it kind of takes screenshots as you go through your day-to-day on your Windows computer, stores everything locally, kind of uses, I think, a RAG technique, and then you can essentially search through anything you've done. So rather than, like, if I have an email that I responded to and I can't remember anything about it other than I think we talked about this topic, it's really hard to find that email. I have multiple email addresses. And so what you could do is you could simply type into recall, find an email where I talked about dog walking, and it will look through everything, not just your email. It'll look through everything that you've done. And of course, it's opt-in, but some security researchers found that you could essentially just read from everything going on. But the news is they're going to be releasing it to testers in October. Daniel, have you heard of this? What do you think?
Yeah, I've been watching it pretty closely because I want a tool like this, but also I spent so long in security. My mindset is very attuned with this community that caused all the backlash. So basically, they see a lot of security people, not everybody. A lot of security people are very risk averse, and they sound alarms for anything. They're like kind of a foreshadowing for a later one. It's like, oh, that's affiliated with the government. Oh, that's spying on you. Oh, that's doing all these different things. And they're very, very afraid of things, which makes sense because their job is to defend things. So they naturally see the worst in everything. My hot take on this is, in a few years, your operating system is going to feel silly if you don't have this feature. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
you get that because you're thinking about the future of all of this. And that's why I think your channel is so good. Because you're thinking about it in context of like what's coming. Whereas a lot of people in security are like, I do not want any of this. I do not want AI. I do not want anything looking at my privacy. I do not want anything recording anything. So I think that's why the backlash happened.
Yeah. And look, everything right now, according to what I've read about AI recall, everything is being stored locally, which I love, by the way. It is the RAG is local, the models are local, being powered by the NPUs, which are obviously on device. And so I really like that. If it's as simple as just encrypting the data, yeah, go ahead and do that. But like, to me, I have so much data online already, and maybe security folks out
Yeah.
there will hate that I'm saying this. It's like, I am not really too worried about it. I suppose if it's taking screenshots of like my passwords and stuff, yeah, like there's some security risks there. But this feature seems so overwhelmingly valuable that to me, the notion of having it all stored locally is like, that's an easy decision for me. I want to use this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the way you framed it is correct. It's like, there's definitely downsides, and a lot of people are going to get hacked. One thing to mention is I would much rather have Microsoft or Apple or Google do this than the other like 300 or 3,000 startups that are going to come up and do this. Because the startups are not going to have like the security expertise or resources to actually secure it properly, but Microsoft will. They're going to do a decent job. They didn't do a great job with the launch and the communication around the launch,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think it's inevitable.
Yeah. And we're going to be talking more about privacy, security, closed source, open source a little bit later in the news. We have a few stories that touch on kind of OpenAI's dealings with the Fed, which is interesting. But let me read a little bit about it. Just per this article, Recall takes screenshots of activity on screen, so exactly like I described. People can search for information they saw earlier. Now, it doesn't really give a lot of information about what like if you can set certain time limits, like, hey, after 7 days, go ahead and delete everything before. But it does, let's see, security researchers quickly expressed concerns about the risks of Windows automatically capturing images without users opting in. Now, I thought it was opt-in, and if it's not, of course, like, it has to be opt-in. Like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't it be?
Yeah, I think that was a big problem is the communication on opt-in versus opt-out was not super clear. And a lot of people did see it get turned on without their knowledge, which I agree that's going to be jarring.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think overall, I'm super excited about this. Daniel, have you heard of Limitless AI? That they make like, yeah. So I
I'm
forget
on
the
order.
name.
Yeah.
What? Sorry, say it again.
Mine's on order. I can't wait
Oh
for it to
yeah,
arrive.
yeah. So it's these little pendants. I ordered one as well. And it kind of records you throughout your day, and it's very similar, but for real life. However, the company that made this had a product that is essentially AI recall before they're really transitioning to this pendant, this physical hardware device. Do you remember what the name of that company or that product was? I'm forgetting it now.
Was it Rewind?
Rewind. Yes, good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rewind AI, which is essentially recall, except it was not specific to any operating system. Let's see if I can find it. But
They might have
yeah,
changed their branding to the new name, which is Limitless. Yeah.
yeah. Let me share my screen right here. Yeah, so this is so they're definitely going all in on this device. This is the limitless device. But previously it was Rewind AI. And yeah, so I don't know. This is going to be the device. I think this is going to be a common discussion in the future of privacy security versus capability. I obviously, like, I tend to lean pretty forward, and I'm okay. I'm like treading lightly on saying this. I don't want to give up privacy and security, but I'm also like, I want to try these new features. I'm okay with a company knowing a little bit more about me. Where do you
Yeah,
fall on that spectrum?
I'm way forward. The one thing I didn't do is turn on rewind for my entire set of desktops. I was a little bit too worried about that because it was a startup, and because, so for example, when you're pasting API keys and everything, screenshots are being taken, it's all being uploaded. Now, any small company, because I've done security consulting for so long, any small company, they don't really have like elite security people dedicated to the job because they're running so fast. So that freaked me out. So I didn't turn that on. But in general, I'm very forward leaning, same as you. And there's an irony here. Once enough people start using these startups and the startups get compromised and everybody has their private data out there, the compromises matter less. Like the impact of this is going to go down, and then the value of the features in comparison to that is going to go up. So I think this is just inevitable.
Yeah, and I all of these companies are racing as fast as they can to get these features out the door. And I suspect that's probably what happened with the miscommunication. Maybe that's even generous to say about how Microsoft rolled this out. But they delayed it. They said they delayed it indefinitely, but now we have a date. I'm super excited. I'm definitely going to use it. I'm definitely going to test it out. And of course, I'm going to make a video about it because that's what I do. All right, let's talk a little bit about OpenAI now, because they had a kind of crazy week. So I just want to touch on this. I've made a number of videos about it, so we're not going to go too deep into Strawberry, because again, it's like a lot of rumors, and you can only go so deep on the speculation. OpenAI races to launch Strawberry reasoning AI to boost chatbot business. So just a summary quickly: Strawberry Q-Star, new technique to give large language model longer term thinking, planning, better abilities at logic, reasoning, math. They're using it apparently to create synthetic data for their next frontier model. Apparently, I think GPT-5 likely. So that was news to me. I did not realize that this reasoning or this Strawberry Q-Star was actually used to create synthetic data. And it's interesting because Sam Altman has talked in the past that to get to the next level of intelligence using AI, you're either going to need a ton of synthetic data because we're kind of out of data that is publicly available, or you're going to need to do a lot more with the existing data that you have. I actually thought the latter was the more likely outcome in the long run, but we'll see. But apparently, Strawberry Q-Star is being used to generate data. And so, but not only that, the real story I thought was OpenAI is showing Strawberry AI to the feds, to the federal government, and it is being used to develop Orion, which is, hopefully GPT-5. So, Daniel, what are your thoughts? Showing frontier models to the Fed. OpenAI is really going lock it down, work with the government. If you read that situational awareness paper, that is what Leopold Aschenbrenner recommended. I don't love this approach, but what do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure you covered the Leopold stuff pretty well. So I would say, in light of the Leopold stuff, I'm also ex-military, so I have another perspective on this as well. So it's like, when I read the Leopold thing, I was like, oh, this is 100% right. I mean, I was already leaning that direction, but he just nailed it. Made it very clear we are in a race not just to AGI, but to ASI against countries like China. And we have to get there first. So when I hear things like that, I start leaning away from distrust of government and more towards, let's make a partnership because we have a bigger enemy. So in that context, I'm kind of okay with it. It reminds me a lot of Palantir, actually, where it's like government affiliated, but it's like for the air quote good guys. So I'm cautious, but mostly positive on it.
But if we frame it slightly differently, we look at OpenAI's approach of everything's locked down, no release of the weights, no release of the code, working closely with the government. versus Zuckerberg and Meta AI's take, which is release it all out there, open source everything, open source the weights. That is the best. I lean towards that as being the optimal approach, and I agree with the logic behind it. So essentially, Zuckerberg and Meta AI team says the idea that private companies are going to be able to protect their weights and their code
Yes.
against espionage from foreign adversaries
Yes.
is a silly notion. We've never been able to do it, and it really only takes one slip up, right? You only need to have one lapse in security to lose your
Yep.
weights. And so with that thinking, why do we think things are going to be different now? Why do we think that a private company is not going to have any human error whatsoever? Because that's really what causes it. So I'm very much about I very much appreciate the open source approach, which is okay, everybody will just have the weights, and that'll make the systems more hardened, more secure. I just really like that approach better. Plus, I like downloading the models and playing with them on my computer. What do you think,
Yeah.
Daniel?
I think you're absolutely right. I was very surprised by Zuck's like analysis there, but again, having seen these startups and consulted for their security programs, they're absolutely he's absolutely correct. It is really hard to secure anything, let alone a thing that a state actor actually wants. And they will use anything to be able to get that thing, including getting people hired, including like, yeah, just all sorts of spy stuff. There's just no chance of securing the stuff. I would say I'm more like 80% meta way and then 20% with a little bit of time, a little bit of pause, a little bit of not full rollout as soon as you have it, but like 80-20.
Yeah. So I just pulled up his letter, which I made a video about, and I covered it pretty in depth. Why open source is the right path forward, and he wrote a pretty convincing letter. A lot of which, if you're already a believer in open source and it being the more secure path forward, it's a lot of what you've already heard and believe. But I just really appreciate him kind of putting it all out there really clearly. Why is it good for developers? We want to train, fine tune, distill our own models. We want to control our own destiny. We want to protect our data. And I think I'm trying to look for where he specifically called it out. But basically, there's a long history of open source projects being more secure than closed source projects. When you have developers and a diverse set and a much larger volume of developers looking at a code base, every single line, every single character, then you will discover the issues much more quickly because you just have so many more eyes on it. So, and again, like also selfishly, I just like to download these models and I like the idea of having them on my computer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I would
yeah,
say I
please go
was
ahead.
going to say one last piece is like the one downside is let's say Strawberry or Orion or whatever comes out, and let's say it is a significant advance towards somebody like China getting ASI, and maybe OpenAI doesn't know that. Maybe that's a time to pause, right? So that's why I wouldn't just immediately develop something brand new and amazing and immediately release it open source.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, if I remember in the situational awareness paper, or maybe it was him, maybe it was somebody else, but it was basically like the weights and the models, the open source code alone is not really enough to do anything with. You actually need the infrastructure as well. And of course, like, yeah, like our adversary China
And
will
the
have
data
that.
and the methodology.
Right.
Yep.
And so they could copy what we're doing. But I'm also a believer that there's probably not some huge step function in increasing capabilities that we don't know about. Like, for example, I don't think some state or even like a lone actor would have discovered some incredible innovation that gives them 50 or 100 or 500% improvement in quality in AI models. I think like even from the kind of cutting edge private companies like OpenAI, the most we're going to see is like 10% at a time. So I just don't think that releasing these models is a bad thing, because they're not going to have this huge innovation that allows them to have the much better capabilities than we can.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he showed the feds though, which, you know, I put out a tweet earlier this week. Makes me sad that the feds has seen GPT-5 and I haven't even seen GPT-4o voice. I'm like waiting for the day to get that. All right. And then let me share this next thing. So Sam Altman said, we are happy to have reached an agreement with the US AI Safety Institute for pre-release testing of our future models. So this is not a one-off. They are going to be showing the US AI Safety Institute, which I assume is a government organization. They're going to be showing them all the models, all the future models. For many reasons, we think it's important that this happens at the national level. US needs to continue to lead. So yeah, there was that. That's
and they partnered with Anthropic on that. So I think these
right.
are all the right motions. And I think OpenAI was very early on this. You remember he went around to Congress and he basically said, hey, you need to regulate us. And everyone was like, why are you doing this? I think it was a very smart move.
Yeah, regulatory capture. If you haven't seen Bill Gurley's talk at the All In Summit about regulatory capture, it's like some number and then miles is the title of it. It is phenomenal. E. Rosner said, I disagree. Look how much has changed in just a year. Yes. However, my counter to that is no individual company has really released something that wasn't at least matched within the next month. So they were already working on it. I just don't think there's going to be this massive leap in capabilities from a single company, state actor, private company, whatever it is. All right. Wow, we almost have 900 people in here. So thank you for joining. That's amazing. All right, next, let's talk about Cursor, because that has been absolutely everywhere this week. Daniel, you're an engineer. I am an engineer. We've been coding, I think, a lot of our lives. Coding is changing drastically right now, and that is what I want to talk about. So for those of you who haven't seen, Cursor AI is essentially a VS Code fork that is AI native. So it is a code editor with AI built in at really every layer. You just simply type out what you want to build. You can iterate on it. You can debug with it, all with natural language. And some of the videos that I've seen are incredible. I think there was an 8-year-old kid who was able to build an entire chatbot in like 15 minutes with no knowledge about how to code. All she had to type was npm run dev, and then everything else was like just natural language. So I'm going to pause for a second. What do you think, Daniel? Have you played with Cursor? What do you think? What do you think about this new era of AI coding?
Yeah, I played with it just enough to see what the hype was about. I think they did a couple things that were really smart. One, they kept it, the interface looks exactly like VS Code. So I think that was super smart, because a lot of people coding in AI are using VS Code. And I feel like what they did was just like a better integration of VS Code combined with Copilot. And they just made that like 2 or 3 steps better in terms of the integration. I feel like Cursor understands the full code base better. And kind of because it understands that, it can help you in a smarter way. And then they got that endorsement recently from Carpathy. That and Carpathy was like, "Yeah, this is how I code now. Basically, all I do is press tab." And I was like, "Man, he's not even affiliated with them, and he's backing them up." Yeah, I'm very excited by it. I'm curious what Carpathy thinks about this, because you ever read his thing called Software 2.0?
I don't think so. No, you have to send that to me.
Yeah. So he's basically saying that like we're still building software 1.0, which is like binaries from code bases. Instead, we should just provide data, and the output of the program will be weights. So I'm curious when that transition is going to happen.
Interesting. quickly, Ahmed, thank you so much. Really appreciate the tip there and for joining. Okay, so a few things. I don't really understand why Cursor has gained such popularity because you can essentially recreate that functionality in VS Code alone. Now, the interface, like they really nailed it on the UI, but I've been using AI coding assistants in VS Code for a while now. I think the fact that it's AI native and they just positioned it really well is probably why they just completely took over the internet this week. And yeah, Karpathy has been talking all about it this week to the point where everybody is accusing him of being a shill. But he
right.
has confirmed multiple times, no, he did not invest. He just really believes in it. And I believe him because, I mean, look at the some of these examples of what people are doing are crazy. I know it might be a little bit hard to see on the screen, but it really is just absolutely incredible what you can do. I actually saw, this was mind blowing. I saw somebody over a weekend without writing a single line of code build a video editor, like a very capable video editor. And it was like really sophisticated. And you could and it had AI tools built in. So just really, really cool stuff. Actually, I think this might be it. Yeah, here it is. Create Mac apps with Cursor. So one day, 265 messages, 700 lines of code later, I built a native Mac app for 11 Labs IO to generate voiceovers and drag your favorite. Oh, and drag to your. Okay, so that's, sorry, this isn't it. This is just another project, but very quickly done. Allows you to integrate into 11 Labs into whatever you're building. I'm trying to find the one. Oh, here's where that girl built a Harry Potter chatbot. Super cute.
I'm going to
Can you guys hear
show
that?
you how to code with
It's very loud,
Cursor.
though.
And you get it.
Okay, I'll pause it anyways. Yeah, very cool. I mean, look, anything that gets more people to code is great, or building things. And the way I see it is, in the short and medium run, we're going to have an absolute explosion of developers, billions of developers, people building things using natural language. And I do actually believe, and I think a lot of people disagree with this, that the next logical step after that is actually we're not going to have any developers. The entire app layer is going to go away, and potentially operating systems are going to go away as well. And I have arguments to back that up. But I want to pause for a second and ask Daniel, like, what do you think about, at least in the short and midterm, there being an explosion of people who can actually build applications?
Yeah, I mean, this is why I'm excited about AI, is the ability for so many more people to actually create. Because there are a lot of people who have app ideas or whatever, and they're just like, oh, I'm not smart enough. Oh, I tried to code one time in high school and I wasn't good, so I never did it. So this obstacle being removed is going to produce a lot more creators. And that's the way I'm thinking about it, is like, this is more people creating things, right? But I think that the reason a lot of people watch your channel is because you are thinking about the future. And I 100% agree with you. I remember when you first started talking about this, and the comments are like, that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. I think 2 or 3 levels from now, which is really only 2 or 3 years from now, you're basically voice dictating while a thing is changing in front of you. So technically, you're still creating, right? It's still your ideas, but it's like, oh, do you mean like this? And you're like, no, the one on the left, not the one on the right. Oh,
Yeah.
you mean like this? No, change the centering, change the font. Oh, you mean like this? So it's like, you're not even touching it. You're not writing any code.
Yeah, and I actually saw a cool example of that. So a kind of glimpse into the future. I'm not going to search for it right now, but essentially what it was is somebody hooked up voice interface, converted the voice over to text, then text put it into Cursor, which automatically rendered a page. So he was able to say, give me a to-do list. And a seconds later, they had a to-do list app. Then it's like, well, actually make the buttons dark. And not typing this, speaking it. The buttons went dark without reloading the page. All of these things were happening in real time. And like that is so clearly going to be the midterm future of what we're seeing. And by the way, here's that the video editor that this guy built, Mang To. 11,000 lines of code, 685 commits, 3 full weeks, Cursor, Tailwind, React, Firebase, web-based cloud saves versions, and can edit on mobile. This was built without actually writing code. He used Cursor. I don't know, hopefully you guys can see it, but it's super impressive. This
Yes.
is really full featured. I'll just play it for a sec.
That's crazy. That's very cool.
Yeah, this did not exist 3 weeks ago. And then this person built it, and they could have built it without actually being able to code. So
Yeah.
Alex, yeah, if you want like your perfect your perfect video editor, you could
Yeah, I'll just
probably
make
create
it.
one. Yeah, you just make it yourself now.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
also
I
like
like
to
what
point
you
out.
said.
Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
you go. No, go, you go.
I was going to say, I like the point that you made earlier, Matt, about basically what is the difference between Cursor versus VS Code and Copilot? And it's like, it seems like it's a number of small iterations. And I think there's many examples of this where 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 actually equals 47. Because if it's just a slightly better feature, but slightly more people talk about it, but those two things combined got Carpathy to talk about it, pretty soon it's a hockey stick. And now it seems like something way more advanced, even though it
Yeah.
might have been just incremental.
Yeah. Yeah. And so much so A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz has put in a lot of money. Andreessen Horowitz is a very well-known top-tier venture capital firm in Silicon Valley, and they invested, I believe it was $60 million in a Series A. And I saw a funny comment about it. Everything is open source, right? Cursor is open source. Well, VS Code is certainly open source. Then Cursor is open source. So people are like, okay, can't I just copy paste it? And I thought that was kind of funny. Obviously, it's like the execution is everything.
That's
So
right.
they're doing a lot of things right. But yeah, so they're invested in Cursor, which is cool. And look, anything to bring more people to programming is great. And I want to touch on why I said the next step after this is actually no applications at all. And I've been talking about that on X a lot this week. Essentially, if you can just tell a large language model what you need, what you want, and kind of the short-term vision is it just creates you an application on the fly. So just-in-time apps, you don't actually need an app store anymore. You don't need pre-installed code. You simply talk to the large language model. You say, I want a to-do list, or maybe not even that. Maybe just remind me of this at this time, and it will create the application for you. But really, it just needs to create an interface in that moment. And so if you kind of extrapolate that vision in the future, you don't need any applications because the large language model is giving you what you need in real time. And all it needs to do is just create the right interface for you. So I really believe that that is going to be the future. Now, timelines, I mean, this is pretty far out. I would say 10, 15 years before we really start seeing applications die. What do you think?
So you're saying instead of making you an application that can give you an output, it just gives you the output instead?
Exactly. Yeah. So it just needs an interface. There really is no need for an application to be there. And when I think about an application, front end, back end, storage, like you don't need any of the business logic anymore. And I will show why I strongly believe that in a second when I show that Doom AI engine. But yeah, that is what I'm saying.
Okay. I guess my response to that would be, if we want that thing to still exist, let's say it's a weather call, like I want to get the weather and it plays a song or whatever, some stupid app. I would say if it gets created and it works for you at that moment, that's fine for you. But if you want to host it as infrastructure, then it becomes kind of an app. I would say there wasn't that middle step where you actually had to make anything. It made it for you. But I would say if it's good, other people will probably want to use it. So maybe it gets hosted and it becomes permanent.
Understood. Let me counter that.
Okay.
I believe that everybody is going to have hyper custom. I even hesitate to call it software, hyper custom UI. The AI is gonna know everything about you. It's gonna deliver exactly what you need when you need it. And the idea that other people can use it well, they'll have their own version of that doesn't need to be hosted.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, I kind of I see it another way. I see this as the creator side way. So what we've been talking about here, everyone is making things and just launching them into the world, and then they exist as APIs. And then to your point about the DAs, the digital assistants, when they want to answer give you an output or answer a question for you, they'll go look at all those available APIs, including all the ones that you've created. And then it'll figure out which one's the best, and it will answer that question or give you that product based on the ones that exist. So I feel like there will just be millions of available APIs to solve sort of any problem. And your AI, its job will be to use the best one to solve your problem.
So I put out this tweet this week. What happens when LLMs no longer need to write code legible to humans? This is, again, kind of on the same topic, but an extension of it. Hyper efficient code will look nothing like our current coding languages. Maybe they will just be symbols. So I also think there's this future in which LLMs will need to write something down, right? They have to have memory, and maybe they will write code until they don't. But like, why do coding languages look the way they do? They get abstracted from ones and zeros up to machine code, up to kind of low level coding languages, all the way up to like the highest level Python, Ruby-esque languages. Why? Well, because humans are kind of bad at writing code. We are just not good at it. And so if LLMs are starting to write more and more of our code, they can actually become even more efficient if they're writing code in their own language. And at a certain point, maybe we can't even read that code anymore. I think that's a really interesting thought experiment. What happens when we can't, even if it's in English and not symbols, what if we can't read the code? It's just so complex, so sophisticated, we can't read it. But then the natural next step after that is, what if it is just symbols?
Yeah, I mean, so what you have here is brilliant. This is your tweet here. This is software 2.0. This is what Karpathy was talking about. I looked at the data of this thing 6 years ago. He wrote this software 2.0. The output of the program. So the only thing the human provides is updated data sets, and then an architecture possibly for the neural net. But the output, exactly like you just put in that X post, the output is actually weights. It's not readable. It's just weights.
That's so interesting. So the weights get, quote unquote, executed, and then that results in some kind of interface for us, or whatever the deliverable is to us. Is that what it's saying?
Well, yeah, the weights become the interface. So you now send data into the weights, and the output comes out that you want.
Right. And the interface is really the only thing that we need. We just need a way to interface with the large language model. And so that's so interesting. I am going to have to read this. I'm going to take a note to do so. I have not heard of this. I can't. Yeah, of course. Andrew Karpathy came out with this November 11th, 2017, almost 7 years ago.
7 years ago, yeah.
That's crazy to think about how far ahead he is. And by the way, I asked at the beginning of this live stream who I should interview. This is a dream interview for me. So I am certainly going to try my hardest to get him to talk to me. This would be amazing. Okay. So let's continue on this topic with this paper that dropped this week, because it's related. So a couple of you in the chat asked, like, what did you just say? Doom AI. Okay, so this is it. So I'm going to play this. I'm going to mute it, but you're going to see what's going on. So essentially what this is Google Research dropped a paper this week with Tel Aviv University and Google DeepMind, where essentially they were able to recreate the game Doom from 1993, I believe. And it is completely done with artificial intelligence. It is completely done with diffusion, meaning none of the code was pre-written. It is not rendered. It is generated in real time. This game that you're seeing here, the logic, the level, how all of the armor, the health, the ammo, how all of that is tracked, the large language model actually has no idea what's happening. It is simply outputting a recreation, a very close recreation of that original Doom game. They call it Game Engine, and they have a bunch of videos for it. I covered it in a video yesterday. I talked about it in the news video this week. Let me just read a little bit from the abstract so you can kind of get a sense of what they did. But we're going to talk about this through the lens of both kind of the future of coding and then also the future of content in general, TV shows, movies, video games. So let me read a little bit about it. Then Daniel, I want to get your thoughts. So we present Game Engine, the first game engine powered entirely by a neural model that enables real-time interaction with a complex environment over long trajectories, so basically long time periods, at high quality. It can interactively simulate the classic game Doom at over 20 frames per second on a single TPU, that's tensor processing unit. The next frame prediction achieves a PSNR score of 29.4, which I don't actually know what that is. Human raters are only slightly better than random chance at distinguishing short clips of the game from clips of the simulation. So that's what they do. They trained a model to generate on the fly in real time the game Doom. And before I get your thoughts, Daniel, I want to talk about one more thing. And Alex, maybe you can link me to this, but putting Doom on different devices is kind of in the hacker culture. I've seen everything. I've seen it in let's see, obviously phones. I've seen it on smart home devices. I've seen it on pregnancy tests, calculators. It's like a thing. Can Doom run it? There's an entire subreddit dedicated to it.
I sent you the subreddit if you want to pull it up. It's in the
Perfect.
chat.
Yes.
Also, real quick, someone asked, can we ask questions? Yes, I will save questions and we will do a Q&A later in the stream. Feel free to ask away. We're just doing news right now.
Yeah, for sure. And also if you have questions about the news we're talking about, go ahead, like throw them up there, Alex. We'll address them.
I'll put them on screen.
Okay, so here, for example, Doom on a Link phone, a VoIP phone. Okay, here's one on a price checker kiosk.
I
Here's
have a
one on a
specific
flower
one
pot.
I'd like to bring up to you. That
Please.
was really, really funny.
We have a cash register Doom. Where are you dropping it, Alex?
It'll just be in the StreamYard chat. It's a YouTube video. Oh wait, did that work?
I'm not sure if you posted it. You post it in the private chat, and I'll pull it up. Here it is, running on a network switch, payment terminal.
Okay, yeah, here we go. Sorry, it's the last link.
This is hilarious. Okay, let me pull this up. Oh my God, I've seen this. Okay, I'm excited to show this. Let me mute it because it's quite loud. Here it is running on the Mac Touch Bar. The deprecated feature that was really garbage. But here it is running on that. That is hilarious. The MacBook Pro Touch Bar. All right, so let me stop talking for a moment. Let me go back here. Daniel, did you see this? What do you think first? And we're going to touch on kind of the what likely will come from this.
Yeah, I did see it. It's really impressive. The most impressive thing to me is that it's happening in real time. That trips me out. I probably think similar to you about this. The way I think about this is the creativity explosion. You see this with like writing poetry, writing things that look like movies, screenplays, stuff like that. So the way I like to do this is imagine that there's only 10 Steven Spielbergs in the world right now, because Steven Spielberg is one of the only people who has not only the idea, but the capability of making that idea possible. Do you live in LA? Not many people do. Do you have access to hundreds of millions of dollars to make a film? Not many people do. So you have this filter that gets you down to there's only a few of these people. Well, if you can live make anything that comes into your mind, whether that's a video or a manga comic or anything, like millions of more people are going to be making things that people want to use. And I'm like massively excited about that. The way I see this, kind of, if you mix a lot of jobs going away from AI, I feel like one of the big jobs is going to be making worlds, making realities for other people to live inside of.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like the future is content to an audience of one. I'm going to describe what
Yes.
I want to see. Now, I actually have a counterpoint to that statement. I
Okay.
think one of the joys of content consumption is sharing the experience with other people, whether it's multiplayer or just even like watching the same TV show together, maybe not even together, you watch it separately, then you talk about it afterwards. If everyone is creating their own content and like what does that future look like where we don't have that nice collaboration between people. We don't have that the ability to
Yeah.
talk about what happened in the latest episode of whatever you're watching. What's the middle ground there?
So here's what I think the middle ground is. So imagine a platform that is gaming different realities against each other. So in other words, let's say regular life, and this is a little bit sad, but a little bit exciting. Let's say regular life, regular jobs are gone. There's just not much work that you could do that can't be done by like an Optimus robot or whatever. So there's not much regular meaning in life. So what you have is these massively online games, which are basically like it's a TV show, but you actually live inside of it. So you start as a kid with some stats or whatever, but you grow and you mature. And there's all these plots, and you're part of these plots, and you basically spend months or years inside of these campaigns, like D&D, but it's a super advanced video game. Now imagine a platform where there's actually hundreds of these games and they're competing. So it's like instead of saying, I want to watch Game of Thrones, you're saying, I'm going to live inside of Game of Thrones for 6 years because it's a 6-year campaign or whatever. So the combination of what you're saying and what I'm saying is that there will be critical mass for millions of people going towards one or the other, and they'll be playing with each other inside of those.
Yeah, so G4GUO says The Matrix. I thought of Ready Player One when you were describing that. One is obviously a bit friendlier than the other.
Yes.
But yeah, so like again, like let's bring this back to what we were talking about earlier, the future of programming. If you're simply able to generate this on the fly and there's no game engine that needs to be written, the pixels don't need to be rendered. Where's the developer in all of this? Like where do they fit in? Are they help craft the model weights?
No, I think honestly that developer becomes a Spielberg type combined with like a story writer, anime person. Like the ideas are what matters, and you barely need enough tech just to be able to manipulate the system, which is probably just going to be voice and saying yes and no to things.
Yeah, I agree with you, Daniel. I actually think creativity is something that I haven't seen large language models do well. They can fake it, but I like true creativity. Like when you go into a movie and your jaw drops, like, wow, I had never thought of that idea before. First time seeing The Matrix for me. I have never experienced that. Obviously, large language models in its current form have only been around for a couple of years, but I haven't even seen anything close to that where AI has generated something that was truly a unique and novel idea. And so I think like this technology, although the implementation will be infinitely easier, generating the ideas and being creative, coming up with novel thoughts and insights, that is still a fundamental human trait and will be so at least for a while. And I think that is going to be valued highly going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I do worry that is actually going to fall fairly soon, but I don't even want to think about that because that's a little bit sad. And in fact, there might be some legislation around that where it's like, look, you have to have a human like making the ideas. I don't know how they would legislate that, but I am a little worried that might fall too. But I hope that there's a number of years where it's exactly what you described. The tech could do everything except for be the conductor the creator of the ideas, and then the tech just implements it.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, let's move on to the last topic quickly, and then we're going to get into our Q&A. So again, if you have questions about any of the topics that we covered today, or anything in AI in general, anything about Daniel and his work with Fabric, drop it in the comments. We'll keep a list, and hopefully we'll cover most of them. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to talk about is this post by Andrew Ng, but more importantly, or more widely, this notion of the cost of intelligence dropping to zero. I believe Sam Altman put out a tweet a few weeks ago. I forget exactly what it was, but it was something akin to intelligence too cheap to meter, meaning too cheap to charge for. GPT, I think that was during the GPT-4o mini launch, so extremely cheap. We're talking about a couple dollars per million tokens at this point, and dropping rapidly. And so Andrew Ng put together this post, and I want to talk about one part of it in particular. Let's say you build an application to assist a human worker, and it uses 100 tokens per second continuously. At $4 per million tokens, you'd be spending only $1.44 per hour, which is significantly lower than the minimum wage in the US and many other countries. So there's a lot to unpack here, Daniel. But first, why, I think it's obvious, but let's just talk about it briefly. Why do you think the cost of intelligence is dropping so rapidly? And what does it mean for human labor? What is the outcome of this inevitable intelligence that is too cheap to meter?
Yeah, I think the reason it's dropping is because there's so much slack in the rope. Like, I think like the Strawberry Orion stuff is actually just going to be like a series of tricks, which just result in massive jumps. And I think there's going to be more and more of those where we're not even close to getting started in this. So I do agree with Andrew there. I would say that the implication, if the cost of inference goes to zero, the cost of intelligence goes to zero, the very next step is really difficult. The cost of work goes to zero. And that's knowledge work, obviously not like construction site, but knowledge work goes to zero. That means companies won't pay for it. That means what happens to the job market? That means we better start building some virtual realities, some Matrix, Ready Player One, because what else are people going to do other than light things on fire? So I think there are massive implications to this, because when we say intelligence, I think we should be thinking of work and realizing the implications there.
Yeah, I tend to be pretty optimistic, but obviously like couched with some realism. As intelligence goes to zero and companies are not going to be willing to pay for it, I would like to think that we're going to just increase productivity with the same amount of people. So I'm reading Mustafa Suleiman's book, The Coming Wave, I believe it's called. And he talks a lot about this. Really good book, by the way. I'm about 2/3 of the way through it now. Yeah, highly recommended. He's the Microsoft AI CEO now. He makes a lot of good points on this front, where he kind of talks about if we're going to be that much more productive, and looking at historical technological waves, typically what happens is a lot of jobs change. It's not, and a lot of jobs actually get created. Some get destroyed, some get created, but the change is the consistent factor. And that's kind of like the theme of the entire universe. Change is the only thing that's consistent. So I suspect we're not going to get to a place where people just don't have anything to do. I think it's just going to change rapidly and drastically. So I really believe that we're going to come up with new things. I mean, we were just talking about it, creativity. Maybe everyone just starts creating a lot more things, whatever it is, content or ideas, research, and they can go deeper into more narrow topics. What do you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a little more worried about the whole pivot thing. Like, we've always pivoted before. It reminds me a little bit about the two horses talking to each other, like outside the Ford plant. So Henry Ford is spinning up the plant, and the horses are like, "We've heard this before a million times," and they're about to be replaced. And the reason I think we need to worry more about this is because every time humans pivoted in the past, they used their intelligence to pivot away from a work item to another work item. But they use their intelligence to do that. This time, the thing being replaced is not a work item, but intelligence itself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think Mustafa Suleiman touched on that in the book too. So I think it's just in my nature to be optimistic about the
Me
future.
too.
But
Me too.
like I agree. You bring up a strong point. Every other time it's something that has been replaced with intelligence, replaced with a new technology. But this might be the final technology. Like that's a weird thing to
Yeah.
say. But
Yeah.
it truly might be. So yeah, we'll see. I think there's probably a longer conversation to be had about universal basic income and what that looks like, but maybe we'll save that for another live stream. Okay. So we have about 25 minutes left. Let's get to some questions, Daniel.
Sure.
Let me change this screen. Let's see if I can do this right. I'm gonna drop you and Mel. There we go. Okay. Let's get to some questions. Let's see what we got. Let's start with something easy. Stanley Lou, what is your workflow when using AI to code? Daniel, do you want to take this one first?
Sure. Yeah. So I use NeoVim is my IDE, and I have Copilot inside of NeoVim, and I've written some custom integrations with my own AI APIs. But that's ultimately it. It's NeoVim with Copilot. I'm not switching to any other editor from NeoVim. So when I see something like Cursor, I have FOMO, but I'm not leaving Vim. So that's where I'm at. And then I use a lot of Fabric. I use a lot of my own tooling that I built.
All right. What is the best Fabric? What do you call the plugins for
Pattern.
patterns? Sorry, yes. What are the best patterns for coding?
So I have some custom ones that do just explaining the content in a very concise way. So for example, if there's like a function or a variable or something about a language that I don't know, like right now I'm learning a lot of Go. So I'll just be like, I'll just copy a whole section or highlight a whole section and say, explain this to me. Explain how Go is doing this versus Python is doing this. And then when I press enter, it's not going to Copilot. It's not going to anything like that. It's going to my own Fabric explanation. And it just gives me a very concise thing. Python does it this way, Go does it this way.
And I saw you switched Fabric over to Go. This is a definite side conversation, but why did you do that?
Well, because if you remember, it's somewhat hard to install things in Python because
That's not the Python I know and love.
first time you heard this, yeah. So it's like dependency hell, and now it's
Yeah.
just like go install in the repo name, and then that is not only the install, but it's also how you upgrade. You don't have to do anything else. You just do one command.
All right. All right. Next question. Could you compare Cursor to Zed? What is your opinion? I haven't used Zed. I plan to use Zed. I have it on my really high up on my list of things to check out. I haven't actually used Cursor all that much either. I'm not doing a lot of coding these days other than kind of the open source AI projects that I just get up and running and play around with them. But maybe I need to do, I know a lot of you asked about doing a tutorial for Cursor, maybe a tutorial for Zed. Maybe we do like a live stream where I just build something out together. If you want to see that, yeah, just let me know. Possibly I'll do that. But yeah, I'm not doing a lot of coding lately. And you already know Daniel is not using either of these currently.
Yeah,
okay.
I look at them just enough to stick with Vim.
Daniel, this one's for you. I'd like to hear Daniel M's perspective on the security of apps created by natural language, artificial intelligence. My opinion is that the security is dubious at best. Fantastic question from Legatus Labienas, or sorry, I'm butchering that name. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. One, um, human code is really, really bad, and it always has been. And so in like 25 years, I've been doing the security thing. Like, we haven't got much better. The only thing that gets better is like the frameworks of protecting us from ourselves. I would say the biggest problem security-wise with all this AI code is that there will be more of it. So we're talking about 10 times more, 100 times more, 1,000 times more. That means more APIs. That means more data moving around. So any mistakes that are being made, they're being massively multiplied because of AI, just because there's more creation. But I actually think there's more hope for guardrails and natural protections to happen naturally with AI, because by default, a new developer is more likely to keep making mistakes by themselves, whereas AI is more likely to get upgraded to defend you against those mistakes. So I think in the short term, it gets worse because we'll just have more attack surface. In the long term, it actually gets better.
Yeah, I think also using AI to review code in the future is going to be a much more prominent. We'll have models that can certainly do PRs and review PRs, give thumbs up. Especially when we have this explosion of code, we're going to need AI to review a lot of it and test your code. Test your code. Write tests. Make sure it's well tested. That's really hopefully a good answer. And then of course, open source. If it's open source and we have more people looking at it, that will keep it more hardened. Yeah, thanks for that question. That was a great question. Let's pull up another one. Okay. Would we ever get movies? So William Charles says, will we ever get movies or instructional content that are made on the fly? So each user gets custom experience. This might be ahead, so I'll ask during Doom demo. So William, fantastic question. We touched on this a little bit, but I actually want to expand on this. I want to specifically touch on the instructional content. I see a future in which you type a question and a video is created for you on the fly explaining how to do whatever it is, right? How do I fix a carburetor on my car? Maybe that's a bad example. How do I debug this thing? And it pulls up it generates a full video for you on exactly how to do that. That seems obvious. It seems obvious to me that all content, especially hopefully, William, after you saw the Doom demo, that the future is content generated on the fly. But yeah, Daniel, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I did a post on this maybe a month ago. I called it, I can't remember what I called it, but the idea was deepfake technology is getting so good. And once you have your DA that basically knows everything about you, you could say, carburetor example or whatever, I need to fix my Tesla in some sort of way. You say, teach me this, but I only have 5 minutes. So watch this. Richard Feynman comes on with a whiteboard and starts sketching on the whiteboard in his voice, using all his mannerisms. Richard Feynman teaches you how to do this because he's your favorite teacher. So it's deep fakes, but for the people that you love, or it's you teaching yourself, or it's your favorite creator or whatever. And I think this is going to be like the fad for instructional videos.
Yeah, absolutely. And then of course, celebrities or well-known people are going to have to give
Yes,
their identity, or they don't
their
they don't
approval.
have to, but they can. And I think that's a whole discussion in itself, but we'll come back to that. Okay, I love this next question from Mr. Awesome. What about the energy cost to run these massive AGIs? Yeah, I mean, this is something that is top of mind for everybody who's in the AI field right now. I think we already know that even based on our current investment into GPUs, we don't have enough power to run all of them. And in fact, I believe OpenAI has multiple data centers specifically because they can't have a single one. It would overtake the energy network of a single state. Now, oh shoot, I'm forgetting who it was, but there was a paper that came out this week that basically they proved that they can do distributed training like really well. So that previously people didn't think it was possible because you had to have these hyper low latency connections between GPUs with memory, and now they show that you can actually do it and do it well and kind of have the same loss rate as normal training. So yeah, what are your thoughts? I've also heard talk about building mini nuclear reactors next to data centers. So this is definitely an active conversation.
Yeah, I'm team solar. I'm team solar. So I feel like we have this giant ball of energy that's like shooting way more than enough at the planet all the time. And the thing that crystallizes this for me is I fly a decent amount. Whenever I'm flying, especially to Vegas, I leave the Bay Area and then I fly over like 7 people, and the rest is this vast wasteland of nothing. Perfectly flat, being hit by the sun constantly. In fact, that's all I do is complain about there's how much sun there is. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So we don't have enough jobs, and we don't have enough energy, and we do have solar power, and the sun comes on every single day. This is a problem that we could solve. Like, and if you hear Elon talk about this, he has the math for it. He's like, we could build like 20 of these things and not have to, giant solar farms, and we wouldn't have to worry about this. So I think it's just a matter of like figuring that out and executing on it.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring up Vegas because I'm in Los Angeles, so somewhat close to Vegas. Right outside of Vegas, they have this solar array, and you've probably seen it, Daniel. But they have these towers in the middle of the solar array, and essentially it takes I don't know exactly how it works, but what it looks like is it's taking the sun's light, and reflecting it down onto the solar array. And when you're passing by it, it looks like the eye of Sauron. Like when you're
It
driving,
does.
it is like the most insane thing to look at, and it is
Yes.
completely blinding. It's right off the highway, but it is so impressive. And then there was another like a demo video that came out this week. I think it was called like orbital something. It was like a startup that essentially can like point light at anywhere on the globe using reflectors. It was all kind of ideas, but I think all of these things are leading to a point where we're going to have really efficient solar day and night. Robert Putney Drake says photonic integrated circuits going to reduce energy costs a lot. I don't actually know what that means. Do you know what photonic integrated circuits means?
I think he's talking about a vastly more efficient solar technology.
Okay.
Yeah, real quick on the reflector thing from the sky. I find that really interesting. I'm pretty sure that's a scam, by the way, because if you watch the video, he moved his thumb, and the speed that he moved his thumb is the speed that the sun came and hit him. And I'm like, first of all, you have a speed of light problem with it going to the satellite and coming back, but then the satellite actually has to turn. So it has to send the command to turn, and then it has to rotate. So I think that was actually not true. But check this out. You know how that solar farm that you were talking about, it's a circle? What it does is it shines them all on one single place, and it's essentially superheating that thing in the middle. Well, if that reflector company was the same, was real, it is a massive orbital weapon. You literally could take reflectors and shine it multiple reflectors and shine it on any place and basically melt it from orbit.
Yeah. So this is the website. I thought the same thing. That is a weapon. It wasn't real. So I don't know if it's a scam or not. It's definitely not real yet. It's just an idea.
That's a good
But
point.
yeah, nonetheless, it seems like okay, it would be cool, but there are so many hurdles to overcome with that. To say the least. Okay. Let's see. Here's a question from Nemanja. Let's see. Did it train? So back to the Doom AI engine. Did it train on Doom gameplay videos and then came up with gameplay on its own? So I read the paper. I read most of it. And the way that I understood it works is they essentially ran the Doom game, created agents, AI agents to play the game. recorded that gameplay, and then used that to train the model weights. So that is how it works. So it is its own gameplay. They didn't pull gameplay off the web. They just spun up the Doom game, put some agents in it, and just played it over and over again. This, Daniel, probably a good question for you. Ahmed, Hamdi, thank you. What does quality assurance, aka testing, mean in this new era of software 2.0? Can it be 100% AI based? And so, yeah, I mentioned, hey, test your code. But if AI is also writing the test, what does that actually mean? So do you have any thoughts about like how do we really make the future of coding when AI is writing the majority of it super secure?
Yeah, I'm doing a talk for Sneak on this actually. So basically, the theme is like, how do you trust AI output? Because that's a big question. I think the actual answer is more AI. Unfortunately, I think there's some cases where there might be a human in the loop, but I would say the more you have to trust this output result, which is like you have this bad disease or you do not have this bad disease, like that's a life or death situation. So you have more scrutiny. But what I'm doing for this demo, for this talk, is I produce a result and then I produce a set of checks, which is a pipeline, and they all run simultaneously. And those checks, it's like, oh, you're a librarian. We're going to check this with Google. We're going to check this with a code editor. We're going to check this for security bugs. We're going to check this for quality bugs. Those 7 things run, and they either have a plus, thumbs up, thumbs down. And then the final one looks at all those results and decides to certify the result or not.
Interesting. So what that workflow? So yeah, I think that what you're saying is more AI to check at each step, but like, yeah, I feel like this is the inevitable future as AI creates more of our software. There just has to be a level of trust in the AI, but then how do we do that? And there's been a number of papers about it. A number, like Jan LeCun talked about it in his interview with Lex Friedman. Can smaller, and I think there was a paper specifically about this, can smaller AI verify larger AI? I don't remember enough about it to talk about it at length now, but I think that might be part of it. Like if we're here, we can understand this smaller AI, the smaller AI understands a slightly larger one, and then so on and so forth. And you have this kind of cascading effect. I don't know if that's actually going to work or not.
Yeah, I would say, what if there's like 100 different checks or 1,000 different checks? One is like, is this a whole number? Is this divisible by 3? Is this an actual human temperature that can survive? Like, you can ask a bunch of stupid questions as checks. And I mean, this is a lot of what quality assurance is. Yeah, hard-coded questions.
Yep.
Right? So it's like, if we ask this 1,000 things, and these 1,000 things we know guarantees or largely guarantees that this is a good answer, and we got the answer back that yes, it's good enough. This is one key piece of this philosophically. We already function on good enough so much in the regular human world. People are like, look, if you ask AI to do a security assessment, you get back different answers. Guess what? If you ask 10 security consultants or pen testers or hackers to hack something, they all get different results.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's like a reflection of how humans work, basically.
Yeah.
I think like when people think about AI, they think it has to be flawless. But it really only has to be better than humans, right? Like humans are far from perfect. We make tons of mistakes all the time. And so like, I think actually autonomous vehicles is a good example of that. If an autonomous vehicle gets in an accident and hurts somebody, like arms are up and everybody is upset. Of course, like anytime somebody gets hurt, yes. But if like there are 3 accidents for every million miles with an autonomous vehicle versus 100 with humans, like
Yep.
I will take the 3 any day of the week. It's just statistics, right? I think it's kind of that same notion. We cannot expect AI to be perfect, but we should see it as an improvement.
Yeah. My favorite thing there is like, I don't want to know how many autonomous car crashes there were. I want to know the number compared to the human number.
That's right.
And my favorite anecdote there is bicyclists talking about how they would much rather, in fact, they make it a point to ride their bikes next to Waymos because a human driver will kill them. Like they will just pull over and like smash into them, whereas they know for a fact that the Waymo will never hit them because it's watching all the time and it never blinks, it never looks at its phone.
Ah, interesting. Have you ridden in a Waymo, by the way?
I have, yeah.
I've never done it. How is it?
Oh, it's amazing. The only
Yeah.
thing that's a little bit bad right now is like the pickup. Like you'll be standing here, it'll drive by you and like just drive past you and go like 3 cars down and pull over. That's a little weird, but it is life altering like the first few times that you do it.
I need to try it. I don't live in a very densely packed area of Los Angeles, so I don't get to see it. I haven't been up to San Francisco in a little bit. I should go up there, but I definitely want to try it out. I've I have a Tesla, and so I've used the autonomous driving with it, and it actually takes a lot more mental energy to ride in a Tesla with a full self-driving on than it does just driving. Like I have to feel like I have to be constantly on my toes while doing it, and I've definitely blown past stop signs with it on. So I don't love it, and I don't pay for it anymore. But like if I'm going on a long trip, like maybe I'll turn it on. Okay. Oh, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when's the last time you used it? Because it got scary good like a month ago.
Oh, well before that. So I guess I need to give it another try, right?
Yeah, so here real quick, the transition that they made is they used to have like this spaghetti code of thousands and thousands of lines of code to say like if this then that.
Yeah.
They completely destroyed that system and they brought in a completely AI based system that all it does is it watches millions and millions and millions of hours of video. So it actually drives like a human now. And it's just night and day difference.
Yeah, I heard about that, and like Tesla has so much data, so much real world data.
Yeah.
In fact, on the Doom AI, like somebody posted a clip of Doom AI on Twitter, and Elon replied, "Tesla can do this with the real world," and I believe that. Right? They have so much data, they can essentially recreate the real world. That's a world model. Not enough time in this episode to really talk at length about that. But let's go on to this last question. ZeroBot, do you believe all AI generated content will be AI watermarked? So I'm going to actually break this down into 2 parts: will be and should be. Should be, I absolutely believe so. We talked a little bit about this last week. If you take a picture with your camera, for example, at a certain point, depending on how many filters or how much AI augmentation you're using, it should record as metadata what you've done with artificial intelligence, and that'll be the watermark in itself. There's certainly going to be bad actors that are creating deep fakes that are not watermarked, and so it's really going to be hard to tell. But I do believe all AI generated content should be. And Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. So I think because of deepfake technology getting so good, we're going to have to switch from what's called in security a block list to an allow list. So a block list is like everything's allowed, you block a few things. Allow list is everything's blocked, you only allow a few things. So here's what this looks like. So for example, I'm watching you right now. I'm reasonably sure that you are in fact Matthew Berman. Pretty soon, I won't be able to tell that. So I think what's about to happen, and I'm surprised I haven't heard more about this yet, is Apple, YouTube, Meta, Android, Google are all going to have like this signing technology. Oh, and also somebody brought up, and you just brought up, Canon and Nikon are doing this as well. They're basically a signature saying that the feed coming from your camera is signed, which means Zoom, YouTube, X, all these places, they'll have end-to-end signatures, which means when you're watching a video from Matthew Berman, it'll have like a green outline. And that green outline means it's been end-to-end signed, that it's actually came from a real camera that Matthew Berman was using, and it hasn't been modified anywhere in between. And basically, people will stop wanting to watch videos that aren't green because there's just going to be so many fakes.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. And on the whole signing point, I've been talking to the founder of WorldCoin. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, I'm actually super curious about that. I would love to learn more about that project.
So I'll just tell you briefly what it is. It's essentially blockchain-based human verification. You actually have to
Yep.
get your iris scanned with this cool device. I haven't done it myself, and that's pretty much the extent of which I know. But it's essentially this way, and it's co-founded by Sam Altman. It's this way to basically prove you're a human, and everybody gets one kind of proof, and AI does not. And I'm going to be hopefully interviewing Saturn, who is the co-founder with Sam Altman, and I think it's going to be an interesting way to prove humanness on the internet, and then in the age of billions of AI agents running amok all over the internet, I think it's going to be potentially really valuable and a really interesting approach to proving that you're a human and that you can actually sign your live stream, sign your content, sign your photos, sign your posts on Twitter. So it could be a really interesting approach.
Yeah, I've got a kind of a benevolent view of that as well, because I see Sam as somebody who's thinking really distant into the future. So I think he says, I'm going to start a company that invents AGI. AGI will remove jobs. Therefore, we're going to need UBI. Therefore, we need a method of getting UBI money to people.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly right. So it's all intertwined. I'm excited. Hopefully I get to talk to him. Yeah, if you have suggestions for what I should be asking, let me know in the chat. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you all for watching. We have nearly 1,850 people watching right now. That's incredible. So thank you all from YouTube. Thank you all from X. I want to also say thank you to Mel and Alex. Thanks for helping out on the back end.
Of course.
Daniel, thank you for joining. This has been an awesome conversation. If you want to check out Daniel, he's at Daniel Miessler on X. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Daniel Miessler as well. And he also has a newsletter, a very popular newsletter, danielmiessler.com. We're missing a D in the
I realized
but
that.
it's danielmiessler.com
There we go. Sorry.
subscribe for the newsletter. And again, check out my newsletter, matthewberman.com. Check out the memberships. We're going to be doing some exclusive member only video, member only live stream. Thanks again. And we'll see you next week. See you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.